Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we are pulling back the curtain on a pretty massive financial illusion. We're going to use some hard data straight from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances to decode the actual math behind the U.S. wealth ladder. We'll break down exactly what it takes to climb from the very bottom all the way to the top. Lower class, middle class, or upper class? Which one are you? I mean, if I asked you right now, you'd probably have an instant answer based on how you feel, right? You look at your paycheck, the neighborhood you live in, maybe the brand of car you drive. But here's the problem. Wealth class actually has absolutely nothing to do with any of those things. It comes down to one specific number. And honestly, when most Americans sit down and calculate it, they find out they are not at all where they think they are. Because here's the thing, there is a fundamental difference between your income, which is what you earn, and your net worth, which is what you actually keep. We are basically surrounded by this lifestyle illusion. You can earn a fantastic salary, but if every dollar flows right back out to pay for that lifestyle, you aren't really building wealth. You're just funding a highly caffeinated, nicely upholstered consumption habit. Your income, as great as it might be, is just not your wealth. So it really all boils down to this definition, net worth. It's incredibly simple. It's just the total value of everything you own, your assets, so your home, savings, investments, vehicles, minus everything you owe, your debt, meaning mortgages, student loans, credit cards. That single number, that is the only mathematical truth that matters for our climb today. Section 1, Tyler and the Math, a case study. Okay, let's dive into this and look at one person's specific numbers to see how this works in the real world. Let's meet Tyler. So Tyler's 34 years old, works as a marketing manager, and earns a very solid $85,000 a year. After taxes, he's taking home about $5,200 a month. He rents a nice apartment for $1,600, drives a shiny 2022 sedan, and, contributes a little bit to his 401k every month. Looking at this profile, Tyler feels perfectly fine. Actually, he feels solidly middle class. But, plot twist. When you sit down and calculate his actual net worth, it's negative $7,000. Yeah, that's a jarring reality check. Tyler isn't middle class at all. Mathematically speaking, he is firmly in the bottom 25% of America. And the really crazy part, he's not alone. Millions of Americans are sitting in this exact same position. Let's actually walk through his balance sheet to prove exactly how a good income can completely mask a negative net worth. On his asset side, we've got a car worth $22,000, about $12,000 in that 401k, and $3,000 in cash savings. That's $37,000 total. But look over at the debt side. He still owes $18,000 on the car loan and is carrying $26,000 in student loans, so $44,000 in total debt. Assets minus debts leaves Tyler at negative $7,000. Because his debt outweighs his assets and he has literally zero home equity, that great salary has barely moved his net worth needle. Section 2, Climbing the Wealth Ladder, the Statistical Reality. Now that we've totally shattered the income illusion, let's start our rapid, data-driven ascent up the Federal Reserve's statistical wealth brackets. We're starting at the bottom 25%, where households have a net worth of under $23,000. Many folks here, just like Tyler, actually have a net worth at or below zero. Now, the biggest misconception is that this bracket is only for minimum wage workers. It is absolutely not. It's actually packed with people earning $60,000, $70,000, or even $80,000 a year. But they're trapped by years of lifestyle creep and consumer debt. The money flows in and it immediately flows right back out to lenders, which totally prevents them from building any compounding assets. Moving up, we find the lower middle class, and then the exact median for American households sitting right at $193,000. Half of America has more, half has less. But if you look just beneath the surface, there's a lot of extreme financial fragility here. The vast majority of these households didn't get here by being brilliant stock pickers. They got here simply by paying a mortgage. Their net worth is locked almost entirely in home equity. And honestly, if you strip out the house, because let's face it, you can't buy groceries with drywall, the median liquid net worth, their actual cash cushion, is only around $30,000 to $40,000. Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is the shift that happens in the upper middle class, which stretches up to $610,000. This right here is the crucial inversion point. As households approach the $500,000 mark, you suddenly see a 50-50 split between home equity and investments. This bracket is the launch pad. It's where intentional wealth compounding takes over. A house just kind of sits there, but investments grow. They generate returns. Once that compound growth really kicks in, getting from $600,000 to $1 million actually takes way less time than grinding from 0 to $600,000. And that compounding is exactly how you break into the upper class, the top 25% of households. Notice how investments completely dominate the picture now, making up 75% of total net worth. Reaching this bracket is rarely about flashy spending or even securing some massive multi-six-figure salary. The research overwhelmingly shows it is achieved through disciplined, consistent investing over a long period of time. Seriously, there are plenty of people out there making $200,000 a year who never reached this level, while disciplined earners making $90,000 absolutely do. Finally, we reach the top 10% threshold, starting at roughly $1.72 million. At this stage, wealth just operates on a totally different level. Think about it. If you have $1.72 million invested and earn just a modest 4% annual return, it generates about $69,000 a year in passive income, without you ever having to touch the principal. At this point, your investments are literally working harder than most people do, generating enough cash to completely replace a median U.S. salary. It's a real game changer.
Section 3. The age plot twist. Context is everything. Because let's be real, lumping a 25-year-old recent grad and a 65-year-old retiree into the exact same benchmark makes zero sense. Take a second to actively scan this data and find your exact demographic. The Federal Reserve data shows that the median net worth for households under 35 is about $39,000. It jumps to $136,000 for ages 35 to 44, hits $247,000 for the 45 to 44 group, and peaks for 65 to 74-year-olds at $410,000. Your position on the wealth ladder depends incredibly heavily on how old you are and how much time your assets have had to compound. So let's bring Tyler back. When we compare Tyler to his actual peers, it is a harsh reality check. The median for his age bracket is $39,000. At negative $7,000, he isn't just in the bottom 25% overall. Against people his own age, he's sitting roughly at the 10th percentile. He is a full $75,000 behind the median for his specific demographic.
Section 4. 3 Paths to Wealth. Tyler's Roadmap. Let's move to the future and see how this builds, because the beautiful thing about math is that it can be changed. We're going to map out 3 possible mathematical scenarios for the next 20 years of his life. Scenario 1 is coasting. Tyler literally changes nothing. He relies entirely on his default habits, paying the bare minimums on his loans, putting a tiny 2% into his 401k, and basically just spending whatever's left. It takes him over a decade just to pay off those student loans. By the time he reaches age 54, his net worth is around $120,000. Now that might sound okay until you remember the median for his age group by then will be $365,000. 2 decades of making a solid income, and he is left vastly behind his peers. Okay, let's look at scenario 2. Tyler gets intentional. He finally looks at his budget, cuts out some discretionary spending, and frees up $700 a month. He aggressively attacks those student loans, wiping them out entirely in just 4 years. Once they're gone, he redirects that money into investments and eventually buys a modest house. By age 54, redirecting just that $700 a month propels him to a $500,000 net worth. He vaults into the upper middle class and sits proudly at the 75th percentile for his age group. Then there is scenario 3, aggressive. Tyler decides to maximize his earning power. He pushes his income up to $110,000 by learning new skills and picking up a side gig. Crucially, he doesn't inflate his lifestyle, meaning he can now invest $1,500 a month. At 37, he house hacks a duplex, living in one side and renting out the other to dramatically cut his housing costs while building equity. By age 54, this aggressive path rockets Tyler to $1 million net worth. He literally goes from negative $7,000 to a millionaire in 20 years, putting him squarely in the upper class. 3 paths, literally the exact same starting point, but wildly different outcomes. And every single one of them is built on realistic numbers. No inheritance, no winning the lottery, which really brings us to our core takeaway for today. Hoping is not a wealth strategy. Knowing the actual math, tracking your real net worth rather than just enjoying a nice income, and making intentional choices over time, that is the ultimate financial advantage. We started this explainer by asking where you thought you fit on the wealth ladder. Well, now you have the actual data and the raw math to check it. Whether you are way ahead of the curve or kind of like Tyler, needing to make a serious pivot right now, you have the clarity to act. So I'll leave you with this. Now that you have the numbers, what is your next mathematically backed move? Thanks for joining me today, and keep learning.